Trend number 5. This is a trend that is just starting to take off and become more visible. And we need to start thinking about both the talent and the metrics that are required to track at an enterprise level our sustainability. But what's really interesting with this one is that, we can spend all that time looking at route optimization and supply chain optimization and cutting down our carbon emissions that way. But we also need to look at what we're doing within data and analytics as well. A colleague of mine that gives this presentation, he's a great storyteller, Gareth Herschel, and he tells a story of some data that he'd found that said that as we start to release, or as we start to bring out fleets of electric driverless cars, that they will ultimately consume, that they will actually, ultimately, through the AI that's required to drive and maintain them, would have higher carbon emissions than all of the data centers today. Now, that's quite sobering, okay? But then the onus is on us to then think about this dilemma and how we meet this dilemma and how we face what we do with data and analytics, how we consider data and analytics as both a contributor and a detriment to our world. So all of this is think like a business. Our second theme, this is where the most technology-oriented of the 3 themes. And this is when we start to talk about moving from platforms to ecosystems, or how do we operate like a business. Now, this is us with our technology hat on. But ecosystems, as you well know, is not limited to platforms and technology. It also includes the skills, our culture, our roles, and our responsibilities. And we need to think of this as a living ecosystem where things are creating and consuming data, and it will continue to evolve, not just as a platform. So, the first one, number 6, practical data fabric. Now, this is another one that isn't a new concept. My colleagues Mark Bayer and Ehtisham Zaidi have been talking about data fabrics and data meshes for at least 2 years at this point and debating the merits of each. What's new here is this idea of a practical data fabric. So rather than viewing the data fabric as something that we have to re-architect and it's this ultimate goal of where we want to be, where everything is seamlessly connected, what this is saying is that there are certain use cases that are already amenable to data fabric, and they might be around customer or product, or might be around claims or patient care, okay? So what we're looking at is a more granular approach to data fabric, where we will then connect and grow the data fabric as we go. So you're actually delivering some value rather than re-architecting the whole thing. So this isn't a new architecture, it's just a new approach. Number 7, emergent AI. I wonder how far into this conference you got before you heard ChatGPT. I would wager that it wasn't the keynote. It might have been breakfast. It was probably before breakfast on the news. Okay, you can't get away from it. But ChatGPT is just a manifestation of what we can do with emergent AI. And it's consumed so much attention over the past few months. What does it mean to our business? What does it mean to our revenue models? But what's really interesting about emergent AI is really the interaction piece, how humans interact with humans, how humans interact with machines. And what we will see in that space is more of AI becoming a team member. So it isn't really an either-or, but it's an and, a slightly quirky team member perhaps, but becoming part of our team. And as the CEO of data, we need to think about how we integrate that into our processes. And ChatGPT really is just the first raindrop of the thunderstorm that is emergent AI. Trend number 8. Converged and composable ecosystems. This is not new to a CIO audience. You've been doing this for a long time already. And it is by far the most technically oriented trend. As humans, we tend to reinvent the wheel. Okay? We create and deploy a new technology, and then we have to worry about how we integrate this. And this is something that feeds into many of my master data management inquiries. How do I get that single view across these silos that we've created? Now, In the data and analytics space, we're starting to see some convergence. It moves at a different pace to the broader application space. Cloud, for example, many of the MDM providers only finished their cloud transitions last year, whereas we've been talking about cloud for 15 plus years. So convergence in the DNA space, we're starting to see the vendors look at these seamless integrated platforms that they connect. But the reality is that we're still deploying with multi-vendors and multi-sourcing and having to connect the dots between them. So what we need is some architectural principles that will support building composable ecosystems. And these modular capabilities will then work together, and we can deploy and redeploy as we need them to build some agility into our strategies. That was platform to ecosystems, or operating like a business. Let's move on to our third and final theme, not least of which, don't forget the humans. This one, again, is really interesting. When I look at the 2023 CDAO survey, and one of the questions that we asked was, what are the top impediments to success, or what are your top 10 roadblocks? Every one of them, without exception, had a human element in it. Granted, there was lack of resources, but there was also lack of stakeholder engagement, insufficient data sharing, okay? So the human element is really, really important to our success. And we don't want to get sucked into all the hype. It might be easy to say, well, great, let's get rid of the humans. Let's automate everything. We've got augmented data integration, augmented decision-making. Do we need the humans? Yeah, we do. So if you're hearing that, we kind of need to reframe that conversation a little bit, okay? So let's look at don't forget the humans. Trend number 9, the consumers become creators. Humans have a natural kinship with the things that we have created. And there's a lovely story of a CPG company in the US in the 50s. And they created those boxed cakes that you can get in the supermarket. Makes making a cake really easy. And they thought that this would take over the world. And then what they found was that they didn't quite get as much traction as they thought they would. So they had one of those focus meetings, and they said, why didn't you like your cake? And the response was, it wasn't that we didn't like the cake was great, but it wasn't our cake. It was not my cake. So they went away and they tried to figure out what was the least amount of effort that a human had to do or a consumer had to do to feel like this cake was theirs. And it turned out that it was cracking an egg. And that's why if you buy one of those boxes today, you still got to crack an egg. Okay. Now, the point here is, if you think about analytics, okay, and you think we spend a lot of time training our analysts and giving them the tools, what if we took that principle and we extended our audience to people who are consuming the data, and we trained them and we gave them the power to decide when and where their output was used, okay? What we're trying to do here, and the pattern that we're seeing here, is that when we give them that sense of ownership, it increases our adoption of self-serve analytics. And just like in the cake example, they didn't need you to crack an egg. They could have put a powdered egg in this. The same in our analytics example. We don't need you to create the reports. We can do them for you. But what it's doing is it's creating this sense of ownership. And in the same time, it's increasing it's improving your data-driven culture. Trend number 10. Humans remain the decision makers. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. There's a nagging concern in the data and analytics community that we are, we're very wholly in favor of data and analytics, and we are. Look, there are some really exciting use cases for analytics, algorithmic trading, for example. And these things are highly automated, and AI will continue to give us even more opportunities to automate decisions. But just because we can automate a decision doesn't mean that we should. If you consider a continuum where we have on the left-hand side decision support, humans in the decision. On the right-hand side, we have those fully automated decisions, such as the algorithmic trading, okay? There is this assumption far too frequently that we will go from 0 to 100, and that is the goal. And then there's this messy bit in the middle, which is human plus machines, which is this ugly stepping stone that we have to go through to get to fully automated decisions. That's not really what we want. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that human plus machine provides a better outcome than human solo or machine solo. Okay? You think about medical diagnosis, that's just one example of that. So humans and machines have different strengths, and we should leverage both. So think like a business, operate like a business, and don't forget the humans. And remember, we're talking about technology, we're talking about automation, but everybody will have access to that same technology. So the thing that's really going to differentiate you in future is the humans and their use of this technology. So what I'd like to say in wrapping that up is, do think about the trends. We don't see them very often in strategies. But when you do look at a trend, there are 4 actions that you can take. You can track, adopt, pilot, or ignore. And there'll be a number of factors that go into how you think about the trends and how you determine whether you will adopt them. The 2 probably most prevalent are, does it match your risk tolerance? And does it match your needs? Okay. If it matches your risk tolerance and it matches your needs, adopt. If it matches your needs but doesn't match your risk tolerance, maybe pilot it, maybe learn, see what the impact would be on the organization. Okay? If it doesn't match either, ignore for now and maybe revisit later. But do keep an eye on the trends, and keep an eye on the trends as we release the next year's trends, 2024, at the start of next year. So in closing, what I would like to say is, we should acknowledge that we don't track trends in our data and analytics strategies, or in many of our strategies at all, if I'm honest. But doing nothing or not paying attention to the trends is not the safe option. Gen AI, or ChatGPT, is a great example of this. If you do not have a response as to why you are adopting or why you are not adopting Gen AI, or what your plans are, I'm sure your board and your CEO and executives have been asking you about that. So we should be ready to answer questions on these trends and be aware of the trends. And to be honest, even if you're not adopting these trends, what that actually does is it opens up a dialogue with the stakeholders in the organization. And that's a good thing, because if you think back to what I said about that data and analytics survey, the 2023 CDO survey, every one of those top 10 impediments to success had a human element. So when you can open that dialogue, whether you're adopting the trend or not, that's a really great thing to do, connect with the stakeholders. So on that, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. Please do leverage what we've put in the appendix, which gives you more information on each of the trends. And thank you, and enjoy the conference.